Still no kung fu.
Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the second trailer for Matrix Resurrections. Now, there's a lot to uncover here, and a lot of Easter eggs that are not just in the trailer for sake of being Easter eggs. So we're going to point out all of these repetitions and then explain to you what it all means. So the trailer begins with a group of police going down a dark hallway, mirroring one of the opening shots of The Matrix, when the police went after Trinity. And then they find this Trinity lookalike. Now, a few details to notice here. One, in the original Matrix, the hallway had a green tint, like most of the scenes that took place in The Matrix, to resemble the green code. But note that the hallway is blue, like the blue pill. At the end of the Matrix trilogy, the machines agreed to give humans a choice between staying in the Matrix or the real world, to take the blue pill or the red pill.
What about the others? The ones that want out?
Obviously, they will be freed.
So it makes sense that this new Matrix would be blue, because people have chosen to stay there, or at least that was the idea originally. Also notice that while this looks like Trinity, the setting is different from part 1. She is in front of a dirty, cracked window. The crack looks an awful lot like the tear in the projector screen that we see later on, and that's not an accident. These windows are a reflective surface, much like the mirror that Neo used to escape in The Matrix 1. But this mirror is dirty, not as reflective. I think this is Trinity's dream that she speaks of later in the trailer.
I saw this in a dream.
But she isn't as able to clearly see who she really is.
We can't see it, but we're all trapped inside these strange repeating loops.
So the idea of loops goes back to The Matrix Reloaded, when it's revealed that the machines have allowed humanity to rebuild Zion 6 times, and that Neo himself is just another system of control. Now, I think this is going to be a very meta movie, so the idea of loops could also refer to us, the audience, watching the original Matrix over and over again. Each time it's a little different, or we notice something new, or maybe just our lives have changed every time we see it. We also live our lives in loops, doing the same thing almost every day.
So déjà vu.
Now remember that in the original movie, a déjà vu was explained as a glitch in the Matrix.
It happens when they change something.
Now the previous spot was called Déjà Vu, showing many of the callbacks that this movie has to the original film. But, unlike some reboots, such as The Force Awakens, these similarities are not just here to repeat the same story and exploit our nostalgia. Lana Wachowski is interrogating the worth of nostalgia, or returning to familiar places. As Neo learned in the first Matrix, it's easier to take the blue pill and go back to the safe life you know. Or in our case, the same Matrix movie that we know. But this movie is challenging Neo and us to look at old things in a different way. When Neo sees Trinity in the present, he's maybe not remembering her in the past. He's remembering the feeling of seeing her in the past. For example, Jonathan Groff appears to be a new Agent Smith.
Billions of people just living out their lives.
Oblivious.
Billions of people just living out their lives. Oblivious.
Neo sees his face congeal because the Agent Smith made this happen to his face. He's seeing a reflection of his memory. But I think that Jonathan Groff is playing a reincarnation of Agent Smith. Later on, he repeats some of his dialogue. And his fight with Neo is an echo of their train station fight. But you might be wondering, how could this happen? Wasn't Smith basically dissolved at the end of Revolutions? Well, if you remember in the first movie, after Smith was penetrated by Neo, very funny, it basically rewrote his code and turned him into a computer virus. Then Revolutions ended with Neo allowing Smith to assimilate him, which allowed the machines to send an energy surge into Smith, destroying him but leaving the Oracle alive. So Neo and Smith are linked forever. If Neo's consciousness, his code, still exists, then it means that Smith's will exist as well. And then we see Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Morpheus, which could mean a couple of different things. Later in the trailer, we do see Jada Pinkett Smith return as Niobi, but much older than she's aged in real life, implying that this is actually several decades in the future. It could be that Morpheus has re-entered the Matrix to once again find Neo and wake him up, and he looks so young because this is his residual self-image, how he believes he appears. Or maybe Morpheus died in reality, but his consciousness was preserved from the multiple times he was jacked into the Matrix. So to liberate Neo, the humans send the code of Morpheus back into the Matrix. It could even be that the other characters we see helping him are reincarnations of the original crew of the Nebuchadnezzar. And this also begs the question, has this always been true? Was the original crew simply a reincarnation? Were the events of Matrix 3 also a simulation, part of a larger system of control? And does any of that even matter if people are living happy, contented lives in this new blue rebooted Matrix 2.0? The official synopsis of this movie says that it's a return to the world of two realities. One, everyday life. The other, what lies behind it. Now this maybe implies that the entire original trilogy was a simulation.
You're inside a simulation of a simulation inside another giant simulation.
And then we have the big mind screw scene. We see a stage where Morpheus and his gang have duplicated the furniture and layout of where Neo chose the red pill. But notice that now it's been slightly reversed. The mirror is on the right side. In the original Matrix, it was on the left. Maybe showing that the original looking glass Neo passed through only brought him into another simulation. Behind him is a projection of that scene where he makes this decision. God, this is amazing. This could be showing that his previous life was all theater, a simulation, a show put on by the machines. It could be showing that these moments of choice that we think are so important are still part of a system of control and that choice is an illusion. It's also why it's important that we're looking at a projection and not, say, a flat screen TV. It goes back to Plato's metaphor of the cave. Basically, there are people in the cave who are chained to a wall, and there's a fire that casts their shadows on the wall, and they think the shadows are the real world, never dreaming that there's actually a fire making the shadows or that there's a whole real world beyond that. The metaphor of the cave is deep in the DNA of the original Matrix.
You ever have that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming?
Or there's another possible meaning. After watching Matrix Resurrections, Keanu Reeves told Lana Wachowski that 20 years ago they made a movie about how people were consuming the internet, and now she has done the same thing for how people use the internet today. So maybe this projection is also a metaphor for social media, the projection of how we live our normal lives that is usually far from the truth. We're watching a projection of ourselves living a life that isn't reality. The screen is even ripped in two, showing the duality of these two worlds. Maybe this is showing that there really are two fantasy worlds and that this is all a fabrication. Then we see a repeat of him touching the mirror, but this time it's not a violent, terror-filled moment. He doesn't get sucked through it. It's more like a moment of recognition, like they're trying to set up this stage and show the movie to remind him of how he felt when he was freed. Maybe by connecting to that feeling, he can free himself once again. And just like in the original Matrix, the hand reaching out of the pod is what the mirror literally represents, being reborn into a new world. Someone has a gun on Neo as he's pelted with rain, and in the original movie, rain or falling water always represented the falling code of the Matrix. And then we see him in the real world, or is it? Not the beast! Being jacked in and returning to the loading program from the first film.
I remember this.
Now this is very interesting. For us, we are always remembering, revisiting the nostalgia of our favorite films. This moment evokes nostalgia in us, but it's also a world between worlds. It's not in the Matrix, but it's of it. The blank area is a symbol of enlightenment. It's like a mantra, a code you tell yourself over and over to make your mind go blank during meditation. So this is the moment when Neo's actually able to remember his old life, because the setting is so familiar, because he's at peace, and he's able to come back to himself once again. Also notice that he looks like himself in here. In the previous trailer we saw that he actually appears to be an old man inside the simulation.
It's what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
But we see him as he sees himself, not as the Matrix makes him appear.
So deja vu. It is obviously all wrong.
Now these are very interesting lines because they hint that this may not be the typical story of the One. So Neo, since he joined with the Source, chose to stay in the Matrix. And the real villain here is himself, trying to keep himself contained in the illusion. If he and Agent Smith are actually joined, then this would explain why he and Jonathan Groff are fighting.
Living out their lives. Oblivious.
Also, notice this guy in the background with the device on his eye, maybe so he can read Neo's code like the bug tracker in Matrix 1.
Taught you good, made you believe their world was all you deserved.
Now this definitely sounds like Neo's consciousness was returned to a Matrix at the end of the trilogy and that the machines buried him. Maybe they couldn't delete his mind, but they could keep him occupied. Now I have another theory about this that I'll go into in a minute that would actually fit better with the overall theme of the original trilogy. Now this shot on the roof is actually part of the same sequence here when Neo saves Trinity from a helicopter attack. We can even see the burning wreckage. But notice now he's standing here alone, and we can see the buildings have turned into an actual Matrix code, maybe showing us how Neo sees it. So actually, where's Trinity? Well, she says later in the trailer,
My dream ended here.
and in the Deja Vu trailer, we actually see her dissolve into code. So what if Trinity is like a Deja Vu cat, a glitch in this new Matrix, and her consciousness is fractured, with Neo trying to chase her down like a new white rabbit and bring back her mind? This would explain the multiple Trinities we see duplicating from her later in the trailer. This is her consciousness being copied and pasted like any other computer file. But first, Neo has to wake up from his dream once again. This moment where he steps off the building. The people behind him think he's a suicide, but this is actually his true leap of faith, how he tests to see if this is real. Morpheus says,
But some part of you knew that was a lie.
Now, when I talk about simulations within simulations, there is one thing that Neo knows is real, an actual constant that can't be faked: his love for Trinity. Trinity is the reason why he chose to walk through the other door in Matrix Reloaded and not obey the machine's system of control.
Your experience is far more specific vis-a-vis love.
So she is going to be his anchor to the real world, his guiding light. On this roof, we see Jessica Henwick's character open a door for Neo. Now this door looks a lot like the one he walked through when he entered the Source in the Matrix Reloaded, except now he's walking through it to leave the Source. Again, like the mirror being on the opposite side of the stage. We're seeing the same actions as before, but reversed. In fact, the movie's release date is even on 12/22/21, which is a palindrome lending to the movie's themes of duplication, loops, and repetition.
It's so easy to forget how much noise the Matrix pumps into your head. Something else makes the same kind of noise. War.
And then we get the return of Niobi, who has not aged as well as Jada Pinkett Smith has in real life. Now this is perhaps showing us that Neo has lived several years longer within the Matrix than just these 2 decades. That could explain why his reflection was of a much older man that we saw in the last trailer. This also explains why there is a new Neo body that's roughly the age of Keanu Reeves. So let me go ahead and address this. How could there be a new physical body of Keanu Reeves in the real world? Well, the easy answer is the machines took his body, plugged it in, and kept it alive. But also, their original plan was for Neo to take a few survivors and start up being Neo once again.
After which you will be required to select from the Matrix 23 individuals, 16 female, 7 male, to rebuild Zion.
Maybe they would start growing the body of the new one, who would be reincarnated and start the cycle all over. So it's possible they've been growing bottles of Keanu Reeves for centuries, which would explain why he still looks so young. Whoa. There are several shots of a chase that we also saw in the last trailer, the characters using the back doors in the Matrix like we saw in Reloaded. So they either have their own keymaker or have duplicated that code and program that allows them to access these shortcuts.
Another way. Always another way.
Now for me, this is the most telling shot of the trailer. Ships in the real world firing on one another. Now to me, all of them look like machine ships. Half are firing red, the other half blue. Is it possible that we're looking at a machine civil war? Maybe there are evil machines that want to keep people inside the Matrix and don't agree with the peace treaty. It's possible that this faction is led by the Architect and the other is led by the Oracle.
How long do you think this peace is going to last?
Now this shot of new Morpheus dressed up as an agent is interesting. Maybe he used code to mask himself and make the agents think he was one of them, kind of like a Trojan horse virus. And then this line.
Most important choice in Neo's life, not his to make.
It's Trinity's choice, as we see her still in her pod. Neo is trying to bring her back to the real world. Maybe she's the key to the system of control that keeps him in place. If the machines convince Trinity to stay, then Neo will elect to stay so he can be with her.
She believed in me. It's my turn to believe in her.
I think this line refers to Trinity breaking free from the Matrix like Neo did. But maybe she can also transcend the Matrix, just like him. Perhaps her ability to replicate and copy herself shows that she can also remake the Matrix as she sees fit. As we see later, when the two of them touch hands, they release enormous power. Maybe, through their real love, they can actually bring down this fake world once and for all. After all, her love for him is how she knew that he was the one.
The man that I loved would be the one.
Her love is why she never lost faith. Now I love this shot of a man falling down this sign with sparks falling like Matrix code. And by the way, this place where they fight off the cops is a bar called Simu Latte, a big clue to everyone that this is a simulation. In fact, it's such an obvious clue that it wouldn't surprise me if everyone else knew this was a simulation except Neo.
This is the bad place.
So this shot, when Neo is on the table, look at this cybernetic hand. It's a cool detail, but it also reminds me of one of the main themes of the Matrix trilogy, that machines and humans depend on one another. Neo and the Elder have a long conversation about control and dependency, how the humans and machines both need each other to survive.
I'm thinking that in a way, we are plugged into them.
This is a subtle nod. This hand is a subtle nod to that theme, or to the original one-armed warrior of Matrix 3, your mom.
I saw this in a dream. My dream ended here.
Now, it could be that after this, Trinity dissolves, just like we saw in the other trailer. And this is why later we see Neo standing alone. Maybe different Trinities keep popping up and dissolving in different places, like she's creating multiple selves while she's still in her pod. Or, in a meta way, when the previous movie ended, Trinity ceased to exist. But every time we rewatch the movie, she is born again. It could be that Trinity has been reborn several times in previous iterations, and that she's reliving those experiences. Maybe Neo is actually running through several past simulations searching for her code.
It feels like I have been waiting my whole life for you.
And of course, the button is...
I still know Kung Fu.
a callback to this iconic line.
I know Kung Fu.
Well, that's all the Easter eggs that we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey.